Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into the work of Neville Goddard.
Yeah, specifically looking at how our thoughts and maybe even more crucially, our feelings connect to the reality we actually, you know, live.
Exactly. We're focusing on a lecture he gave back on March 15th, 1968.
That's the one. Truth of concept known by feeling it inspires. Catchy title, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And our goal here, our sort of mission for this deep dive,
Hmm.
is to really unpack his idea that imagining something and really feeling it, that's how reality gets created.
And how maybe we can actually use that without getting lost in like super abstract stuff.
Right. So, okay, where do we start with this? What's the absolute core idea?
Well, it really hinges on that title phrase. The truth of any concept is known by the feeling which it inspires.
Okay.
Goddard's whole thing is that imagination isn't just idle daydreaming, it's the actual creative force.
So it's not just wishful thinking. It's actively building a mental scene where your wish is fulfilled. Like it implies it's already done. You're in that reality mentally.
Precisely. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. He stresses that what other people think, it just doesn't matter. Forget about their opinions on whether it's possible or if you deserve it.
Huh. So it's entirely internal.
Completely. It's your thought and, crucially, the feeling that thought stirs up inside you. That's the only thing that counts.
It makes you pause, doesn't it? Like when you imagine something you want, do you just flash an image or do you actually linger there, stay in that mental scene until you feel certain?
Yes, that feeling, that sense of certainty. Goddard says that's the indicator, that's the proof, the truth he's talking about. It shows you've impressed that idea onto your deeper mind.
So the real question for anyone listening is, do you let yourself feel that, the emotion of it already being true?
Exactly. And to kind of anchor this, he brings in the book of Habakkuk.
Habakkuk. And the name itself means to embrace. Is that right?
That's the meaning, yeah. And Habakkuk, the prophet, he's really struggling. He's asking God, why does evil seem to win? Why the silence?
A timeless question, really.
Oh, absolutely. And his response is quite deliberate. He says, I will take my stand upon the watchtower and watch to see what he will say unto me. He's putting himself in this state of active waiting, expectancy.
And what does God say?
It's profound. The instruction is, write the vision upon tablets, make it plain, for the vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens, it will flower. If it be long, then wait, for it is sure and it will not be late.
Wow. Okay, so connect that back for us.
Well, it ties directly to that feeling of certainty. Your imagined state, deeply felt, will manifest. It has its own timing, its own appointed hour, but it's sure. You just need to wait for it to ripen.
And he links this appointed hour to the idea of the embrace, doesn't he? Like impregnation.
Yes, exactly. He connects embrace with conceiving something internally. He even brought up that previous point about Moses being covered, remember?
Yeah.
As a sort of symbolic union. It all points to this inner conception.
Right. But he also says the time between, assuming that state and seeing it appear,
Yeah.
that's often unknown.
Yeah, especially with things that seem simple on the surface, like his example of just deciding, I am wealthy. There's still an interval, and you don't necessarily know how long it will be.
He gives a personal example too, right? About wanting to leave Barbados.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic Goddard story. He wanted to leave in March. Everyone told him, no way, not till September. Shipping was all booked up.
So what did he do? Just hope.
No, that's the point. He didn't just hope. He deliberately used his imagination. He pictured himself vividly walking up the gangplank of a ship, focused on the feeling of it.
Then generated that inner certainty he talks about.
Exactly. He got that feeling of, yes, this is done. And then
Then the seemingly impossible happened.
pretty much,
Yeah.
before that feeling even faded, the phone rings. An offer for passage on a ship. And get this, he was way down at the bottom of a huge waiting list, thousands of names. But he, his wife, his daughter, they got the spots.
That really drives it home. The feeling, the inner certainty came first, and then the external reality rearranged itself.
That's his whole point. The truth of the concept being on that ship was known by the feeling it inspired before it happened externally.
Okay, so for someone listening, how did they start putting this into practice? What's step one?
First, clarity. You've got to know what you actually want. What's the concept you want to make true?
Get specific.
Right. Then you create a mental scene, but not just any scene, one that implies it's already done. You're living it now. Feel the emotions of it.
And crucially, don't go asking everyone else if it's okay or realistic.
Absolutely not. Goddard is very clear. Only you know. Your inner conviction is the only validation needed. Don't dilute it by looking outside.
Trust the process.
Yeah.
Trust that promise from Habakkuk, the vision has its own time.
It will flower.
Yeah.
You just hold the feeling.
Now, you mentioned Goddard looks at bigger patterns in Scripture, too, like in Exodus.
Yeah, he draws attention to the Israelites in Egypt, specifically the 430 years they were there. And the significant detail is that on the very day the 430 years ended, the text says the whole host of the Lord departed. It wasn't approximate, it was exact.
Precise timing again.
Right, and Scripture calls this a night of watching and a mystery.
And mystery here doesn't mean unsolvable, does it?
No, not in this context. Goddard explains it means a religious truth that's revealed by God, something you can't just figure out through logic alone. It's revealed truth.
This leads to that interesting point about the time frame, right? Sometimes it says 400 years, sometimes 430.
Exactly. Genesis mentions 400 years, but Exodus and Galatians say 430. Goddard sees symbolism here.
The 400 years that's linked to the cross.
Yeah, the Hebrew letter tau, shaped like a cross, has a value of 400. He connects this to being sort of symbolically crucified or enslaved in this physical world experience.
Okay, so what about the extra 30 years in Exodus?
Goddard links that to Jesus starting his ministry at about age 30. He interprets those 30 years as the time after the embrace, that moment of inner conception, of feeling it real, to the birth from above, the emergence into a higher state of consciousness after going through worldly trials.
So 400 is like the general time in this state of being, and 30 is a more specific gestation period after that inner shift.
That's how he interprets it, a symbolic duration in the world, followed by a specific developmental period after the inner embrace.
And he saw this pattern in his own life.
He did. He identified his own embrace experience in 1929. And then his birth from above, as he called it, happened in 1959, exactly 30 years later.
Wow. But he also said not everyone is aware of that initial embrace moment.
Right. He mentions a man named Benny who had these incredible visions, but couldn't necessarily pinpoint when that initial deep conviction, that embrace, actually occurred for him.
So if you don't know the start date,
You can't measure the 30 years, right? Doesn't mean it's not happening, just that the conscious tracking isn't there for everyone.
he uses an analogy for these unknown intervals too, doesn't he? Something about eggs.
Yeah, budgie eggs. A friend was breeding them, had 7 eggs, only 3 hatched in the first week. And they didn't know exactly when each specific egg started incubating.
Just like we might not know exactly when our desire will hatch into reality.
Exactly. It mirrors that uncertainty. The
Yeah.
feeling of certainty is the impregnation. The concept is the egg, but the hatching time, it varies.
Like different animals have different gestation periods.
Precisely. Horse, cow, human, sheep, chicken, all different intervals. Same principle applies to our manifested desires.
So it always comes back to that core idea.
The truth is known by the feeling, that certainty, that conviction. That's the signal.
And the actual time it takes can be anything from.
Instantaneous, like the Barbados call, or a day, a week, a month. He even mentions a year or two for something big like starting a major business.
And we don't usually keep detailed logs of all this stuff.
Not really, which makes it hard to create some kind of universal timetable.
He says the concept is like an unfertilized egg until
Until you occupy it, until you move into that state and feel the certainty of it being real. Then it's fertilized. Then the countdown, whatever it may be, begins.
And if you do have that conviction, and maybe some insight into timing,
Then Goddard suggests you could potentially prophesy its arrival. You know it's coming because you've done the inner work.
he really felt his own life followed these scriptural patterns closely, didn't he?
Very much so. The embrace, the 30-year interval, the birth from above, the later experiences like resurrection. He saw it all lining.
And he saw that 30-year pattern in Exodus, in Jesus' life, and his own. It suggests a kind of underlying structure.
A structure for how individuals awaken one by one out of that slavery to limited perception, each in their own time.
Let's talk about this story of Benny's vision again. That was quite something.
Yeah, Benny dreams he's at a party, left looking after kids, and this striking boy appears, fair skin, blue eyes, calls himself David, and calls Benny father,
And the dream repeats.
which, according to Genesis, means it's confirmed, established by God. Goddard connects the description of David to 1 Samuel, contrasting it with the fact that the Christ child isn't physically described.
So how did Goddard interpret David in that vision?
He saw David as representing the eternal youth of the Ancient of Days. And in that visionary state, Benny, regardless of his own appearance, was perceived as the Ancient One by his symbolic son, David.
It really highlights how symbolic and personal these inner visions are.
Absolutely. And Goddard even made a specific prediction for Benny based on this, about something happening July 8th, reinforcing that idea of appointed times. Back to Habakkuk again. The vision has its own appointed hour.
Okay. And then there's Ezekiel. How does that fit in?
Ezekiel opens his book saying, "In the 30th year, the heavens opened, and I saw visions of God. Behold, a stormy wind."
The 30th year again. And the stormy wind.
Goddard connects that stormy wind to the experience of being born from above, which happens in that 30th year after the embrace. It's linked to the resurrection of Christ within the individual.
That idea of, unless I die, thou canst not live.
Exactly. God's symbolic death to the old way allows the individual's true life to begin. The resurrection isn't external, it's an inner realization, a self-impregnation. The sender and the sent are one.
So another 30-year gestation, this time for God's awareness within us, after the symbolic 400 years of wandering.
That's the framework he presents. It's complex, but it forms a consistent pattern in his view.
So given all this, what about right now? There's always stuff going on in the world, economic worries, uncertainty.
Right, and Goddard basically says, for the person who understands this principle, this law of assumption, the external chaos doesn't negate your inner power.
You can still stand on your watchtower.
Exactly. Like Habakkuk.
Yeah.
Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Persist in that state, regardless of what the news is saying or what seems logical.
The key is getting to that feeling of certainty within yourself.
Yeah.
That's what inspired. That's the truth for you.
That's the operational power.
Now, Goddard was pretty confident in his interpretations, but he also acknowledged others might have different experiences.
He did. He knew people might have visions or feelings that didn't perfectly match his own pattern. He'd quote John, if all things were told, the world would not contain the books, implying countless unrecorded experiences.
So the advice is?
Trust your own inner conviction. If you genuinely have that feeling of certainty, trust that. His pattern followed scripture closely, he believed, but it wasn't necessarily the only way the truth could unfold.
So it's not just about wishing. It's about building that deep inner conviction.
Absolutely. It takes persistence.
Right.
You mentally see the world from the state of your wish fulfilled. You stay there. You dwell in that feeling until you feel the thrill, the reality of it.
He compares it to pregnancy, right? Once conception happens.
Once you achieve that certainty,
Yeah.
the main job is done. Now you just wait, you carry it, trusting its appointed time.
That leads into that funny story about the woman on the subway.
Oh yeah, asking for a seat because she had the impression she was pregnant, but she didn't know the due date.
It's a great analogy for our own potential impatience, isn't it? Waiting for our desires to show up.
It is, and Goddard connects it back to that symbolic 30 years, which might seem long to us, but in the grand scheme, in eternity, it's just a short wait, part of the process for the elect, those who are awakening.
He wraps up with a quote from William Blake talking to Isaiah.
Yes, a really powerful one. Blake asks Isaiah if a firm persuasion that thing is so makes it so. And Isaiah confirms, saying firm persuasion removed mountains. Then Blake adds the kicker. But not many are capable of a firm persuasion of anything.
Oof, that hits home. The power is immense, but requires real conviction.
Exactly. So Goddard brings it back to the practical steps. Assume the state. See the world reflecting it. Stay there until you are utterly self-persuaded, thrilled by its reality.
So wrapping this up, the big takeaway seems to be, forget looking outside for proof. The real proof, the truth of your desire, is found in that deep feeling of certainty you generate within yourself when you imagine it fulfilled.
That's the heart of it. And we really hope listeners take this seriously. Maybe experiment with it, see what happens.
Because ultimately, you're the one in charge. You're the operant power. Your imagination and your feeling, that's what creates change.
And if you can cultivate that inner certainty, that firm persuasion, you can navigate whatever's happening externally with a kind of inner trust, trusting in that appointed hour for your own visions.
So let's leave everyone with a final thought to chew on. If you truly knew, deep down, that your firm persuasion held the power to shape reality, what would you dare to firmly persuade yourself is true? Really think about that.